I really enjoy doing the more unusual Victorian knits because some of them are really bizarre.
It looks like a nappy for the world's largest baby.
Some of them are just, yeah, that's knitting, that's sensible, and some of them you think, why? And I couldn't work out what made these railway stockings. Oh, do you wear these to travel on the train? Why? What do railways have to do with a pair of socks? And so because I wanted to find out what railways have to do with a pair of socks, I decided I'm going to knit this pattern. That is the entirety of the motivation behind this project. I will wear it with my Victorian ensembles. Honestly, I just wanted to knit these for the hell of it because I want to know what they look like. Hello, I'm Zoe, and on my channel we like to rummage around in the attics of fashion history and see what we can plunder. I often do a little bit of historically based sewing, knitting, I do some modern stuff, I do some crafts, so I do a little bit of everything, and you just kind of come along with me and join me in some of my more strange and unusual projects, and or projects that I need the motivation to actually finish. I was having a little bimble around the archives online, and I was having a look at past issues of Godey's Ladies book, which is a magazine that was pretty popular around the middle of the 1800s during the Victorian era in America. It's an American publication, and I'm pretty sure that this is a pattern from the 1860s. I'm gonna fact check myself in the corner here, and I was having a little flick through, and because I wanted to find a pattern for Victorian stockings, because stockings are one of the last undergarments I need to completely finish my walking ensemble. Now, this is a solid 30 years before the ensemble is based in. My walking suit, both of my walking suits are from the 1890s following a original Victorian pattern, and these socks are from the 1860s. There is a 30-year discrepancy with these socks. However, I personally have been knitting from my grandmother's collection of patterns from magazines from the 70s, which is like 50 years ago. So have decided that it isn't within the realms of historical adequacy, if not historical accuracy, but these are so fun that I decided that I was just going to give them a go. The illustration is kind of vague. Now I've knit the sample, it makes a lot more sense. So this is my sample. The pattern states, cast on the needles as many stitches as would be required for an ordinary stocking for a child. Knit it once around, then rib until 1 inch long, then bind off. Take up the stitches and commence knitting straight around plain stocking stitch until you have 1.5 fingers done. Then knit once around, dropping every other stitch off the needle. Then stretch out the stocking and the stitches will run down until it reaches the ribbed piece and no further, forming a beautiful open worked stocking. Having kept the remaining stitches on the needles, finish off the toe by knitting straight around, narrowing every time on each needle. It will shape itself to the leg and will be sufficiently long, as it only requires 2 fingers in length for a lady's stocking. So you do have to make sure that you cast on an even number of stitches, and then once you've dropped all of those stitches, you kind of pull them back, which gives you a very open kind of look, almost like a lace without any of the bother. Now I've seen the sample next to the illustration. For an illustration in a magazine from that period, it's pretty accurate. They take a lot of artistic license with pattern illustrations, if indeed they even bother to include one in this era, so it can be a bit of a guessing game. It doesn't actually, I think, give you any real instructions on how to decrease to the toe. I'm going to work that one out when I get there. I'm going to follow the pattern, I'm going to knit the length of my index finger and then half again, and I'm going to see what happens. It is interesting, it's an interesting technique, and I'm going to be quite excited to see how these turned out, because they don't have a heel. Now I'm guessing because of how sort of airy-fairy this is, you know, maybe you don't need a heel. I know that all of my modern tights don't have a heel, they're just a straight line. So I don't know how it's going to work. I don't know how it's going to fit. I don't know what it's going to look like. I have no idea. We are going to find out. Ideally, I would be doing this reconstruction in wool, but I'm a firm believer of kind of using what you've got. And I had this, it was cheap. I did a burn test and it is definitely 100% acrylic. Sometimes, especially if it's the first time I've done a historical knitting pattern, I don't mind using a cheaper wool just to get the techniques down. But for the sake of this kind of silly little experiment, I'm okay with using acrylic. It's the right weight. I already have it in my stash and it's the right colour. So I did think about using some of my 100% wool. I've got like a lot of yellow wool for some reason, and I've got some red, and I do know that the Victorians did have coloured stockings, like this fabulously eccentric example from the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I researched this to find an example to illustrate my colourful stockings point, and now I just think I need these. But by far and away, the most commonly knit colour is white. So I just decided I was going to go with a different fibre but the right colour for this experiment. It's a bit of fun. I'm having fun with this. I don't want to take it too seriously because that takes some of the fun out of it sometimes. If I put too much pressure on myself to make sure that all of my historical reconstructions are like 100% accurate, you are going to drive yourself insane because that is an impossible standard to hold yourself to, for one, and for two, it's expensive. It would be really prohibitively expensive if I only bought all of my materials new and that they were 100% accurate. And I'll be real, I don't really think you can tell once it's knit up and being worn, especially because you don't really show off your stockings. Victorian dresses go to the floor, so And hey, if they turn out really pretty, then I can wear them with my modern things and just have some cute little lacy knee highs or something. So I'm not mad about it. I will see how they turn out, and we're gonna enjoy this experiment. As with all Victorian patterns, it is beautifully vague. It just says cast on the standard number of stitches you would use for a lady's or child's stocking. I have cast on 70 stitches on 2.5mm needles, just because when I used the 3.5s, the drop stitch was really very gappy and I didn't feel like the rib was that tight, so I've just gone down. So this is really surprising actually how little work you do to get a really long amount of the drop stitches. This is only 12 rows using 3.5mm needles, which is quite interesting. So I think that these should work up fairly quickly. I feel like they're kind of gimmicky, they don't have a heel. Cast on, knit my first row, and now I am starting my first rib row of knit one, purl one, and I'm not sure how many rows I'm going to do yet. I've just knit 12 rows on my stocking, which has got me to 1 inch long, which is what the pattern says I need. So I am going to cast off. I think I'm going to do a stretchy bind off just to be on the safe side, then pick up the same number of stitches to knit round so that when you drop stitches back your whole sock doesn't unravel. Very clever. I think, to be honest, if I was to be like making up this pattern for myself, I might do the ribbing as 2 inches. I need to do some research and see if a finger and a half is like actually a set measurement that's now kind of obsolete and that we don't use. Maybe it's a way of making sure that if it's like a one size pattern, maybe they think that the length of your finger and half again is going to correspond to your foot size. I don't know. These patterns are notoriously vague. So, yeah, we're going to find out. We are going to find out. I'm trying to follow the pattern, like, completely 100% to what it says. So, normally when I knit socks, I will knit the cuff of one sock, then transfer to the larger needle, then I will knit the cuff of the second sock. And that is a way that I found because of my ADHD, I can like kind of trick myself into not getting second sock syndrome, because look, I've already started the second sock before I finish the first one. I don't know why, it just works. But for this sock, I'm not going to do that, because if it sucks, I don't want to have, you know, spent all the time doing the ribbing for the second one if I need to completely redo all of my stitch count and everything. So I have cast off what I have done, and I'm just trying it on. Excuse my hairy legs, I don't shave them because bollocks to the patriarchy, I guess. Too much faff. So there we go, I have done my cuff. Pretty pleased with that, all things considered, and now I'm gonna pick up 70 stitches and carry on camping, I guess. I then spent an enjoyable couple of hours sat on my garden bench listening to my birds and getting some knitting done. Spring has sprung in the garden and it's absolutely lovely. This was a really good travel project because other than keeping a little bit of a track of the rows, I could just knit without thinking about it whatsoever once I'd got past the cuff. And if you didn't want to count the rows, you could do it purely by measurement, and that's also completely fine because that is how the pattern is written. I just like to make sure that both of my socks match, so I generally keep a pretty good record of the number of rows and stuff like that. I started knitting my stockings on the 17th of April, and by the 23rd I had finished my first stocking and it was blocked and ready to go.
Your socks match the skin.
They do.
Yeah. Is that why you wore them?
There's something amazing about knitting patterns that are so old. What was the person's life like who came up with this pattern? When were they born? Where did they live? What did they get up to? What things did they see that we learn about in the history books? It's not necessarily a question I'm ever going to be able to answer, and that's part of the magic. I have knitted now 60 rows. When I get to the end of this row, that will be 61. By my gauge calculations, I should have knit 5 inches of the body of the stocking by the time I get to 62 rows. I'm now only a row and a bit away from dropping every other stitch and pulling it back to get the drop stitch effect that the pattern calls for, and then start decreasing for the toe. It is now Wednesday and I'm not convinced that I'm going to be able to knit the second stocking in time for when I want to get this video out and have time to edit, but hopefully it should at least give you an idea of what this pattern is going to look like, and then what I can do is put up examples on my blog and in YouTube posts and on Instagram when I have both stockings finished. Probably show them in, say, a Whip Wednesday or something like that. We have got to the exciting bit. I am going to knit one and drop one every other stitch, and then we get to rip it back. Oh, it feels a bit nerve-wracking, but I know this is what I'm supposed to do, so it's okay. Right, knit one, drop one, knit one, drop one, drop one. I'm going to come back when I have finished this, and then we'll have a go at pulling it back and see what we get. This currently measures 6 inches long in total, 1 inch of rib, 5 inch of stockinette, and then I'm going to measure it once I have done all of the drop stitches and pulled them back and see how much it grows. Oh my goodness, you guys, it's looking so cool. It feels a bit wrong to drop stitches and then kind of unravel all the work you've done, but It's looking amazing, and it looks, in the flat knit, I really wasn't getting a lot of like, hello kitty, you come say hi to the people? Hello baby. Meow, you come to say hi? Meow. You're such a chatty girl, you're gorgeous. Hello baby. I'm cat sitting. This is what it's looking like so far. I'm just giving it kind of a tug and they all sort of unravel. I'm sort of trying to go back and forth so that the tension is as even as possible. But look how stunning this is. Oh wow, this is gonna be really cool, and I love how much it's kind of growing. That's interesting. I hope that it's not going to be too wide. I'm kind of hoping I haven't knit a sock that's like ridiculously too big for my feet. This is such an unusual pattern. It's kind of a bit of a mess around and find out kind of situation, so we are going to find out together. So I'm gonna keep doing this and I'll pop back on when I have a fully unravelled sock to show you, because I feel like it's going to get a bit tedious otherwise. Hello. Meow. Hi baby. Meow. You're my special girl, huh? Yeah. Aren't you the cutest? Yeah. Hello. Meow. Hey, Squeakums. This has grown incredibly. I can hardly believe that it's the same length of knitting. That's crazy. That is crazy. It's looking kind of lumpy because I've obviously not blocked it yet, but look at that. That's so cool. That's so cool. That is so unbelievably cool. Okay, I'm so pleased I did this. This is amazing. I'm gonna probably do the toe on double-ended needles just because there are so few stitches on these, and they don't do toes very well. I always end up switching to DPNs to do the toes, so instead of my circulars. So I'm gonna do that when I go home and have access to my DPNs. I am super stoked about this. I'm so excited. This is awesome. It's gonna look amazing. Gosh, I can't wait to finish and block these so I can like try it on and see what they look like. I am giving it a bit of a block. I think that if I were to knit this pattern again, I'd want the sock to be a lot longer at the toe, sort of to here. This bit covers my big toe and that is it. But I made the mistake of thinking, oh, I'll just follow my normal toe cast off pattern, adjusted to the number of stitches I had remaining on my needle, which was 35. That was stupid. I shouldn't have done that. I should have just like started from the beginning and maybe worked it out a bit better in my head. But hey, decisions were made. Lack of instructions occasionally results in these things. It's evened out a bit. The cuff was like really lumpy and uneven, but also it has like travelled with me everywhere, so you know it gets a pass. Steam blocked it. Try and get these to relax a bit. Maybe I would have got more results if I'd have wet blocked it, but to be honest, I really can't be bothered to wait for it to dry, so steam blocking it is. This toe is definitely not long enough. It only really covers my big toe, which then means that like my smaller toes are kind of in the gappy area. I don't think that's ideal. I am half tempted to go back and just re-knit the toe on my first stocking rather than putting up with it, I think, because otherwise I might not wear these if they're annoying to wear. I don't know. I don't have a matching pair, so I've not worn them out yet.